Hello, and welcome to today's Living with Crohn's Live. I am Sherry Lip, and I am the founder of Happy Gut for Life, and I am so happy to have you here today. Today, I'm going to be talking about kind of a tougher subject. It's about diet judgment. So, I put this question out. Oh, my life. Okay, I think I had a little skip in my stream there. So I I put this question out there. I'm going to be talking about diet judgment, and I put the question out like, what topics do people want to hear about? And this was kind of a big one. Like I said, it's a little tougher because it can be hard to talk about. The comment was like judgment on like starting and changing your diet when you have Crohn's, which is a topic I am really interested in. I'd love to hear multiple points of view on it. So I'll be going into a couple different things that I've been researching lately. And then, if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to put those in the chat. But we'll start out first. I have an announcement. If you haven't seen it, I am going to be a speaker at the SCD Rocks conference this August. So I'm really excited about that. I hope to get to meet some people, and I'll be talking about, so I haven't made my full presentation yet, but I'll be talking more about my journey and like what got me here and what's kept me in remission and my life with SCD. So I'm very excited about that. It is in August. It's in Bellevue, Washington. If you need, I'll put the link in the comments after this is over for if you want more information about that. But I'm really excited, and I hope to see some of you guys there. The other thing is, in the last podcast, I talked about that I was gonna buy at the end of it. I said I was thinking about buying an old cookbook that I was talking about food enjoyment, some like making recipes, and I said I might buy the old cookbook I grew up with. So I did. So if you're listening, you're not going to be able to see the visual, but I am showing it right now. It's the Betty Crocker cookbook, and it was published in 1978. So it does have all my old favorite recipes. And if you are watching this, it is in really good condition. I was really surprised because that last time I saw the one that I grew up with, it was being held together with duct tape. So this is even better than that one towards the end there. So I'm excited about that. I already found a recipe. I'm going to make a CD. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be sure to talk about that. So let's get into diet judgment. This is a big topic because when we're deciding, let's start with deciding to choose diet as a way to help manage our symptoms. So first of all, I've talked about this before. You're going to get a lot of opinions about like what you should do. That definitely just comes with the territory on any illness. I mean, you have somebody's like, well, I had this and I did this, or I know somebody who did this. So you're gonna get advice, and that's fine. People are trying to help. Sometimes it'll be unsolicited. So we all have to deal with unsolicited advice, and once you kind of start talking about digestive issues, people are gonna like flood you with their own digestive issues if you haven't had that already. Um, but but you're making the decision for you, and you're researching it. So that type of judgment, for me, like deciding what you're gonna do, that's something that I like to just say to myself, I've made this decision and I'm happy with it. I think if you're unhappy, if you're not quite sure about it, that's probably where it's going to affect you the most. So kind of really be feeling solid in your choice if that's what you're going to do, because the judgment that you get from others won't affect you as much. So that's, and dealing with family, I know that can be extremely difficult. And, don't get me wrong, it took me a while to get past that part of it, whereas people are kind of, that you can tell, even when they've accepted that you're doing it, you can tell that they're just not saying anything. That's almost worse than them saying something because then you can answer it. But, you can kind of tell when people are just like, I'm just not going to say anything, but I don't think they're doing the right thing. So that can be kind of difficult too. But on that end of it, when you've decided um, what is best for you, that just have, feel good about that, and feel like, if you want to address it with people, you can. But I typically am kind of on the no thank you side of it these days. I don't try to go too much detail unless someone's really interested. I think that's an important part of the process, is not worrying so much about other people, what other people think about it. When it's your direct family, it can be much harder, especially when you're turning down, um, you know, food that you used to like and everybody likes, and maybe it's a family meal or family dish, that everybody liked, and you're not eating it anymore. It can be touchy, but I think at the most, when it is close, you can explain that you're doing this for you, and it's helping you feel better so that you can be at these family get-togethers instead of homesick. That's kind of the thing I use. I'd rather be there than at home by myself. I'm not feeling well, especially, so you get to go do these things. And so maybe the food, it's not really that big a deal. Um, the other part of diet judgment is that when we've made the decision, maybe we're doing SCD or GAPS or one of the very regimented protocols, and we decide to expand from that. That is where I am. I don't eat 100% SCD, and I have expanded from that. And yes, there is a lot of judgment in whatever community you're in. For me, it's SCD. So that is something I continue to deal with, and I've really started to get a handle on over the past few years. In that it is okay if you want to decide to do something else, whether it be a little bit or a lot, you know. And same if like I was associated with somebody who was a vegetarian, maybe even a vegan. I think they were plant based, and so, and due to health conditions, they started eating some meat because they had like an autoimmune condition, and they felt like reducing their carbs and adding proteins was going to help them. Well, I mean, the flood of people that came in really criticizing them was overwhelming. Because people just couldn't believe it, because in the plant based, there's all kinds of other issues. And you're talking about animals and stuff like that, but they could not accept that they had made this decision. And that is something that's very difficult. And it's the same in the SCDU realm, because people get very, um, you get very close to it because it's helped you. So what I do, I don't really, in the SCD communities, it's hard to, some of them don't allow talking in outside of the diet, which is fine. That's their community, and it makes sense because people can get confused. But I created my private group on Facebook if you want to join it, so that people can talk about everything. Because to me, adding other foods is a part of the diet. It's a part of the process. Because we are healing. Like I call the diet the healing process. Well, do we accept that we're healed some or not? If we're and that doesn't mean just go eat everything. Like I said, I tried that and it did not work out for me. I've met some people that said that works for them, but we don't know. I don't know exactly how long of a process they were on. But for me, adding those other foods, I was trying to, now once I had that period and I got back, back to health and restoring my gut health, I wanted to make some healthy choices. And I think that if we get, we kind of get into food as a moral judgment, that can be very it can lead you down a kind of a bad path. And I've kind of debating talking about this, but I think I will in the next week. I'll dive more into that, and that is I am IDB and eating disorders. So, and food morality plays a lot into that. There's also a lot of cultural issues with that. So when we narrow down too much, we might be leaving out food that is important to somebody culturally. And that is something we need to be aware of, instead of just judging, oh, you should be able to handle it, eat the way I eat, and that is the best way. So I see that a lot in the SCD community. where it's like I wish everybody ate this way, and everybody's being so unhealthy, and it does feel that when you first start. Um, but I think that, and like, I've tried to move away from even calling foods legal and illegal. It's just so extreme, even though I just say this is a part of the diet or this is a not part of the diet. And so you're like, well, I'm making a decision that's outside the diet. It's fine. It's not illegal. And that's my feeling on it. And I feel pretty strongly about it just because I want to move away from these behaviors that can be mentally damaging. And that is, developing severe fear of food and developing morality, around food and what other people are eating. So, dealing with that judgment again, it's kind of the same thing. You have to feel okay when we feel unsure about what we're doing and somebody questions it. That's hard for us because we're already unsure and we're like, oh, I must be doing the wrong thing. So I think that feeling strongly, developing that confidence, that is something I try to coach on a lot, is developing confidence in our food choices because I feel fine. I eat some quinoa. I'll go over a little of these things. Uh, some quinoa. These are my regular sweet potato, plantains that are green, and also, by the way, plantain chips. People talk about them being legal or not legal, and plantain chips are almost always made from green plantains. So don't make an assumption that they're sweet if you're going to have those. I think I eat those too. Green plantains are actually a great prebiotic, and there were some studies many years ago where they found them to be beneficial to people with Crohn's, which is what led me to them in the first place. And and I've done very well because you cook them. You can't eat a raw. You can't even eat a raw sweet plantain, let alone a green one. So I make many things with those, and sweet cocoa, unsweetened chocolate. So I've gotten a few things, and that's a very regular thing for me. And then there's a few other things in there. I'm probably forgetting something that I eat pretty regularly, but there's a few other things in there that are not SCD that I eat fairly regularly, and that I've done fine with. I think that, some of it is like we get so scared that we're going to have a flare up again. It is hard. And if you don't want to add other foods, that's fine. I just want to, think about like what your reasons are and, where you're at in your health. Some people have, with autoimmune conditions, everybody's different. Just like if you think about somebody with MS, there are people with MS with very severe symptoms, loss of speech and loss of mobility, and then there are people living with MS that are pretty much living a normal life, and maybe their flare-ups are very mild, and they have like some milder physical things like fluttery eyes or shakes, but they're not they're not as impaired. So think of it that way. That is true of most autoimmune conditions. I had super severe Crohn's, and so I was very afraid of that coming back. So it took me a while to kind of get used to my body. But I do want to say I had super, I mean, as severe as it gets, I had a total bowel blockage caused by the inflammation and symptoms that were putting me in the emergency room every weekend. So, and so I want to say it's not necessarily so even severe. You can get to that point of health, but you want to know that you're there. And so that's my biggest thing. When we're judging other people, we shouldn't be judging what other people are eating because their situation is different. And I've talked about this a lot. Like I mentioned, the cultural implications. There's also a big financial one. So when we're talking about, be aware when we're talking about eating with almond flour and doing all this stuff and cooking all our own food and spending hours and writing to companies, there are people who just do not have that ability financially, time wise. And I know, and I am a big believer and we make time for the things that are important for us, but I'm just talking about the huge picture where we're spending so much time and we're obsessing over things, and some people do not have that ability. And if we do have mental issues, that kind of obsession can be detrimental. So we don't want to judge other people's situation, because if they are coming already from a point, or if they've developed a point of disordered eating or even an eating disorder, and that's one thing I'll be talking about next week, kind of the differences between those two things. Um, yeah, being so regimented could be mentally too stressful for those people. So we want to be mindful of what people's backgrounds are. And like I said, culturally, if we're feeling like our culture is being obliterated by diet, that's something to be aware of too. We don't want to be insensitive to those feelings, and we want to make sure that people are feeling like they are still themselves. So that's the big thing for me. As far as judgment goes, you know, I really encourage people, if you're in that situation where somebody's judging you, it can be hard, and I'm happy to talk to people about that. But the other thing is just feeling good about the decisions we've made. So if you're like, I'm on SCD and I'm like, I want those sweet potatoes or the chocolate, and I'm gonna try it, or even if you just like, I am gonna have something way beyond, I want my birthday cake, that is your decision. And don't let people guilt you, even if it doesn't go well. You can get back on track. You can, it's your decisions, and you have to feel good about them, and what you're doing, because if you're not feeling good about your decisions, that's where binge eating can really come in. So I've asked this question to many people, and I said, how many people have gotten that bag of cookies or chips and then like ate the whole thing in a matter of a day or two, because you're like, well, I shouldn't have had this, I'm just going to get rid of it. And you know how many people, and it was 50% said yes. And so that is something that people don't get to talk about in the groups very much, because we are afraid of getting that judgment. Even outside of special diet, you get judgment for like that kind of thing, and we really shouldn't do it. But if you're said, oh, okay, I ate that, maybe it wasn't my best decision. It's fine though. Let's move on. You're not gonna binge eat. If you're saying that food was allowed to me, I had it, and I'm fine with it. That's good. And I'm like, nah, I don't feel that I should have done that. That's also a move on point, because you're like, I ate a cookie. I shouldn't have, or it was fine. I needed it at the moment. Maybe you needed it at the moment. I like to, maybe your kid made it for you or something. I mean, I told the story last episode about my grandpa buying me the ice cream, and I still have sadness to this day that I didn't have it, and I kind of wish I just had some. So I want to say what your decisions are okay, and sometimes we make the decision that doesn't work out, and we move on from there. We learn from it, and we did make our future decisions based on it. We don't need all that judgment and worry about it, even though we're dealing with our health. We can't control every aspect of our health, and I think that's another important thing to think of. I see people rack themselves with guilt over, oh, I ate this and now I don't feel well, and it's all my fault, and maybe that didn't even cause a problem. We don't know for sure. I think the eating patterns, that's more patterns are more um that's more concrete. A one-time thing, that's not so concrete. So, I don't want us to get wrapped up in these things and over worry. But I'll be talking a little bit more about that next week, because that's more on the disordered eating. This one was more about food judgment. Try to stay away from it. I see, and if you're the one you're in that phase of like, I hate the way everybody else eats, and we should all be eating like this. Then I think that we should, think about that, and think about, try to apply your thoughts just to you, and not so worried about what everybody else does. We just can't control it. We can't control what other people do. I mean, there are unhealthy things that lots of people do. Lots of people smoke cigarettes, and we know there is a warning on the package. So we know that is detrimental to our health, and people do it. We can't control it. If we're a non-smoker, we can't control that other people are smoking. So it's the same with food. We're not going to eradicate, a lot of processed foods out of the stores. We're not going to convince people, and also, you know, uh, I don't even know if we have the capacity as a world to have all that healthy food with the amount of people we have, and that's an unfortunate reality in our society. But we could. I mean, my hope too is that we move to more whole foods. The more people eat them, the more available they will become, and the more they can lessen the amount of those processed foods that they make. But I don't see it happening. So that's why we have to worry mostly about our own selves. So that's why I put on the thumbnail for this video, "You're number one," because and I put the judgment as a cross out, because that is what we want to do. We want, this diet is for you, and is for you to get healthy, and maybe, whatever you've worked out with your family. But we don't need to worry so much about what else other people are eating, because it's just food. I mean, there's all kinds of things. I see people eat things and maybe I could have it. I don't want it. So I would like to see people in general all over make kind of a less of a big deal. Food and family go together, but it doesn't have to be a specific thing. So I would like people to kind of move away from the judgment phase and do what is best for them. So that's my thoughts on that. Please be sure to come back next Saturday. And I will be talking more in depth about an even tougher subject, that's disordered eating and IBD. Maybe autoimmune a little bit, but since I'm focused on IBD, I'll be concentrating on IBD. So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you found this helpful, please give it a like. And I will see you next week.